स्पीकर हैं वो मौजूद हैं वाया स्काइप नीदरलैंड से, और उनका नाम है डॉक्टर ताहिर अब्बास। डॉक्टर ताहिर अब्बास ने काफ़ी सारी अनगिनत किताबें इस पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट के हवाले से लिखी हैं, और एक जो उनकी रीसेंट किताब है जिसका नाम है द हाइपर नॉर्मलाइजेशन ऑफ इस्लामोफोबिया एंड रेडिकलाइजेशन इन एन एज ऑफ अनसर्टनिटी, इसके हवाले से डॉक्टर साहब खुद जो है वो इन डिटेल हमसे बात करेंगे प्रोग्राम के आखिर में। तो सबसे पहले जो है वो हम अपने गेस्ट स्पीकर को वेलकम करते हैं। एंड वेलकम ऑन बोर्ड टू सहेली प्रोग्राम फ्रॉम बर्मिंघम UK.
Hello, welcome. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. How are you doing, Dr. Saab?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, very well, very well. Enjoying the weather today, a bit soggy, but yeah, alhamdulillah, all good. And good to see you as well.
Thank you.
So Dr. Saab, as you know, today's topic is going to be under discussion around the title of Islamophobia. So our audience would like to know, how would you define Islamophobia? Because we know that there are lots of definitions and each person sort of distorts Islamophobia in their own context or based on their own convenience. We would like to know, how would you define Islamophobia?
So Islamophobia is many different things. It encompasses, it contains so many different aspects of what is essentially the fear or hate of Islam and Muslims in very simple general terms. But that includes issues around hostility to migration. It has hostility to multiculturalism and differences in our society. And there's all sorts of fear around extremism and radicalization that is also part of Islamophobia. So there are many different aspects which are to do with prejudice, it's to do with discrimination, it's to do with exclusion, it's to do with what we call othering, and where people make divisions between them and us. And these are quite powerful issues today in the context of the world in which we live, especially after the events of 9/11, and over the last 20 years things have grown worse and worse. So it's not like Islamophobia just happened after 9/11, it's been around for a very long time. In fact, as long as Islam has been around, because there's always been a fear of Islam among sections of the West. But today it's kind of accelerated and grown into something very difficult to manage and contain.
Yeah, makes sense. So then, Dr. Saab, there's this common stereotype about Muslims, that they're from another world, they are culturally and morally inferior, or all their actions are basically motivated by their religion. So these are just a few stereotypes I'm telling you about. So what do you think, where are they, basically what's the orientation of these stereotypes? Why are they attached to Muslims? Does media have a great part to play in this?
I think one word may capture it, which is fear. And fear that is maintained, developed, pushed out by the media, as you mentioned, by our politicians who use Islamophobic sentiments when it's in their interests. I mean, we've seen many politicians, for example, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson writing about ladies in burqas who are bombers, were bank robbers rather, and he used the sort of the idea of the letterbox. Very insulting and deeply degrading. So fear lies at the heart of all of this, that the idea that there's somehow something alien, something undesirable, something frightening, something unfamiliar, something that is not us in this experience that is shaping ideas of Islamophobia.
Yeah, very well said. So then, Dr. Saab, how would we know, if we're being victimized against an Islamophobic attack, or a hate crime, or racism? How would we be able to differentiate between these three?
So there are lots of things that cross over here. I mean, there are legal protections against hate crimes. There is a law that prevents these kinds of things from happening, or rather prosecutes people for those who are found to have carried out hate crimes. And these are religious, ethnic acts of violence towards individuals or institutions. So if a mosque is attacked with what sticker or an animal head is left outside the door, that's a kind of race crime, hate crime. And if you can prove that, then we can prosecute the offenders. But there are also subtle issues or things that go about undetected. So when somebody discriminates against you when you apply for a job, and you have a Muslim name in the application, and you don't know necessarily it's because you're Muslim, but there's a real chance that it might be. It's difficult to prove that. So there are times when it's absolutely clear what it is, and there are times when it's compounded, it's sort of mixed up with race and racism. This is why Islamophobia and racism go hand in hand.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes absolute sense. So then, why do people, especially the liberal right, dismiss Islamophobia?
Well, you see, there's a particular sort of segment of the media and intellectual sort of space that we have in Britain today that seems to think that any complaints that Muslims make are not worth considering. That when they scream Islamophobia, it's really because they want to hide something that's sinister or problematic about their religion or their culture associated with religious values. And it's ascribed to the religion when in fact there are these other problems. Of course there are social problems in all communities and all societies, but they're not based on religion. Just like extremism and radicalization is not based on religion. Religion is a tipping point for people who buy into the ideology, but there are other social forces that take people there. But again, there's a real denial on the part of many people who work in sort of the extremism and the counter-extremism industry is, okay, let's fix ideology and we fix all these problems, but really the real problems are elsewhere in society. And there's a much longer history, much longer story about a young person who goes through these physical, psychological, social changes around them that create the problems. And so the denial is a suitable way of taking attention away from the failings of government policy, the failings of the liberal intelligentsia to tell the story as it fully is, and the failings to want to engage with other members of society, because the language around Muslims is so toxic. It's so presented in such dangerous terms that it's difficult for a lot of these people to open up their minds to it, especially when a lot of these writers, thinkers, concentrated in London and they don't go out to the Midlands or to the regions where there are real communities living real lives. And often most people get along with each other, minority, majority, Muslim, non-Muslim, but there is this sense of divide that's always put out there, and the idea that Islamophobia is not really an issue because the Muslims have something to hide about their practices is something that is quite popular among certain sections of the liberal intelligentsia.
Yeah, and seems like more like, even in the highlights and articles, blogs, vlogs, all sorts of the kind of verbs and the nouns attached to the Muslims are, the words like extremists and jihadis and, attackers, so on and so forth. So then obviously these are the kind of words, highlighted in bold that are going to be having an impact on the layman's mind. And obviously they don't know what's the underpinning idea of all of this. All that they can see is that, these typical kind of extreme words or vocabulary, if you like, is being associated with Muslims. So that's what Muslims are all about. And I'm thinking that's from where the stereotype is coming out as well, being attached to the Muslims.
It comes out, as you say earlier, in media, television, Hollywood, magazines, everywhere where there is a focus on Islam and Muslims is always picking up on the negative stuff. And then it reinforces in people's minds every day, this drip effect. You stop thinking what is real and unreal because it's constant and always negative and sustained and managed and controlled. We have 52% of the newspapers controlled by two people in the UK. The right-wing press is always presenting Muslims and Islam as dangerous concepts and ideas, and I think it's distorted the language. And there's also other factors as well. So around social demographics, we have 5% of the population of Britain as Muslim, which is 3 million people, of which 1.2, 1.3, let's just say, are Pakistanis, of which 2 out of 3 of those Pakistanis have roots in Azad Kashmir, especially in places like Birmingham. And a lot of that is about communities who came to places like Birmingham and Bradford and had the jobs in the industrial sectors that disappeared, and so they got trapped in poor areas. But a lot of the literature will tell us that this is about self-styled living, that they want to mix with us, that they want to live separate lives. These are all kinds of lies, really. Lies based on a misunderstanding of the history of social policy and the misunderstanding of how racism has always been there. Historically, we were all under the category of Asian, and then only until the late 1980s, particularly with the Salman Rushdie affair, then suddenly these Asians were also Muslims and non-Muslims and Sikhs and other groups and Hindus, and then it just with the end of the Cold War and the global scene changing as well, Islam and Muslims became under sharp focus, and things haven't really shifted since then. And obviously 9/11 made things a lot worse.
Yeah. So then, Dr. what do you think post-Brexit, Islamophobia has been seen on an increase now, with our masajids being attacked, with our Muslim sisters being predominantly attacked. So then, how can we make our people feel safe whilst they're living in predominantly white-dominated areas? How can we make our Muslim sisters covering their heads, heads with their scarves or hijab, feel more safe when they're out and about on the roads? How can we, what kind of strategies can be put into place to make the local Muslims communities feel more safe and be able to integrate into the mainstream society, carry on living and doing things just as any other Brit would?
That's right. I mean, it's interesting, and it's an important point to note that the vast majority of the victims of Islamophobic attacks are Muslim women, because of their visibility, because of the headscarves, because of the population concentrations in different towns and cities. They are the ones who always get the worst of negative attention. Yeah. So it's right that they need to be supported and helped here. And of course there are some protections. I know when some of the mosques were being targeted in 2017, the Met Police and other police authorities went to support those mosques and provided a kind of security fence, especially during times of Jummah, for example. So it is right to say that the state does have protections and means of support for Muslim groups, and it's important to remain aware of that. That's not just it's completely against Islam and Muslims. Yeah. It's not the case. And so there are these recourses to the law, to the system. But it's also important to remain vigilant, remain sensitive. Obviously, when there's an attack, the next day is when we see the spike in hate crime. It's when people watching the news and not critically thinking about what they see and hear get even angrier and start to do crazy things. So it's about being vigilant. It's about being sensitive to one's surroundings. I think Muslim communities are relatively safe within Muslim majority areas or where there's diversity in those areas. It's when they, as you mentioned, go out into areas where they are much more visible. Even when driving in their car, they can potentially face attacks. Even just taking their children from to school and back, they are vulnerable to attacks. So it's about being vigilant and being in groups, small groups if possible, and just obviously watching out for any kind of difficult parts of these sort of areas of the city.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then how about when we have to wake up, especially our men, they need to go to the massages at the time of Fajr to go and pray. Obviously, they won't be clustering together in a group per se. They would just be going as and when. So does that mean that it's like, a call for trouble for a Muslim to get out of his house and go to a place of worship just by himself individually?
I mean, I think that there are these risks. I know my father, who still lives in Small Heath in Birmingham, I keep telling him to worry about it, but he says, Allah will protect me. And people do have these beliefs, and it's important. But the thing is, I think in those kinds of areas, it's relatively safe, although Muhammad Salim was sadly killed by a far-right extremist coming back from mosque late at night. So these things can happen, and these are very tragic events, but it's really... what do? You can't sort of lock yourself in and say, I'm not going out. You have to say to yourself, no, this is my country, for good and bad. I belong here. I have a role here. I pay taxes here. I work here. So I have a right and I have a freedom to express my religious values. And I will exercise them in spite of the changes. And I think it's important. Just like when people say, we'll say, no, we don't deal with terrorists and we go on, we catch the view the next day after an attack. The same thing with Muslims. We must continue to stamp our authority in relation to our presence in Britain. Britain is ours as much as Britain is a country of diverse, multicultural communities with huge, vast histories. I mean, the idea of the nation itself, we can call into question, but there are. It's not that we're alien. It's not that we should fear our presence. And yes, there are risks and dangers associated with being Muslims, but I mean, I think it's right to keep going forward and not being afraid. And when there are concerns, and we've seen some horrible things happen in mosques, of course. Christchurch comes to mind. But I don't think there's any alternative to not just keep going and carrying on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then, as a protective mechanism, or say as a damage limitation mechanism, what kind of systems of support are there in place for the victims to go and seek some kind of refuge or support, if you like, assistance?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything beyond obviously reporting any incidences to the police is necessary. There are CCTV cameras everywhere in all cities, so there must be some record. And if it's possible, then obviously to try and move ahead with the prosecution. And the more and more of these cases come forward, the more it becomes clear that Islamophobia is not just a cultural problem or an idea of representation problems in the media. It's actually about real people being affected by violence, and with the rise of the far right, which is often in response to what they think is the Islamization of Britain and Europe. So theirs is what they call a counter-jihad, and they're getting angry because they see all these other Muslims getting angry, and it sort of feeds off each other. So there are lots of dangers, and I think the government, as much as what we hear in the media and by politicians is always a bit skewed, behind the scenes there are always good people working to try and deliver policies that are about putting communities first and delivering what is right in terms of equality and fairness and social justice, because that's really, I think, the heart of a lot of the values of social policy in the main, although we know that politics tends to skew that.
Yeah. So then, Dr. Saab, I know that you've written numerous books around the title. So, and there's another, book of yours that is already being out, and by the name of The Hyper Normalization of Islamophobia and Radicalization in an Age of Uncertainty. A very interesting topic, very interesting title in itself, and it's huge and vast. So would you be able to give us, a deeper insight into the book, and how can a common man benefit from it?
So I think the idea of the book was to reflect on some of the work I've been doing over the last 2 decades now. Teaching at Birmingham University, I was also teaching in Istanbul. I also traveled to different parts of the world, America. I went to Jerusalem. I know there's lots of eyebrows that might be raised by that, but it's important to see these things in situ, as well as places in Pakistan and Indonesia. So reflecting on my travels and my observations, my analysis, I'm trying to say that these ideas of Islamophobia, the fear, the hate, the racism, the cultural exclusion of Muslims and Islam, is directly linked to the idea of extremism and radicalization. What does that mean? It means, like, most of the time when we think about extremism, it's young people in urban areas, in parts of towns and cities across Western Europe, who are feeling marginalized, isolated, angry, vulnerable, and lacking direction. And this Islamophobia has a way to, feeds into their anger and fear. And the government knows this. It's been reported on previously that things like the war in Iraq was a key component in the radicalization of young men in the mid-2000s. And so obviously that's quite straightforward to appreciate in many ways, but just to try and theoretically put it together was the idea of the book, as well as these reflections. And then we must also be aware that far-right extremism also feeds off and then feeds into Islamophobia. Right. So we've got these different radicalizations in small areas, and the debate around Islamophobia, which is global in terms of the war on terror, national in terms of how we kind of completely forgotten the ideas of multiculturalism, and we seem to just think about the other as alien and undesirable, whether it's the EU or also Muslims. And also locally, when we think of local areas, half of all British Muslims live in 20% of the poorest areas in the country. Yeah. So there's quite a degree of poverty, disadvantage, criminalization. The police pick up young men, throw them in prisons for longer sentences for the same offences as others would get from this. And it is a cycle that feeds into itself, and this is the problem. And my solution to this is that you can't just tweak ideology. You have to get to the root of these, and the root of these issues are social problems. So we fix the social problems by improving social cohesion, social resilience, empowering communities, building confidence and trust and engagement and participation with resources, not just funny talk out of Westminster, but real resources. So places like Birmingham, which is where I was born, where I was raised, and I was schooled, and I worked, and also other parts of the country that have just, to use the rather problematic term, left behind. Yeah. And it's those angry voices that led to Brexit. Brexit is a symptom of the austerity policies of the last 10 years. I mean, we talk about the white working class who were left behind, but what about the Muslim working classes who were left behind, who face additional disadvantages because of being Muslim, being brown, being minorities, experiencing racism and Islamophobia, as well as economic problems.
Yeah.
And all these things sort of get forgotten and missed out when we're just constantly talking about terrorism and women's issues. I mean, not that they're not a problem, but the idea that the liberal intelligentsia love the idea that Muslim women are going to rescue Muslim men first and then Islam altogether. I'm slightly joking when I say something like that, but it is important to understand that there are these agendas that get played out, and then people get picked up and instrumentalized as, look, we've de-radicalized this person and this will help you to see the bigger picture. So we have to be wary of games and politics. We also have to be aware that this is not something to shy away from. It's a problem. It affects all of us as Muslims, and we need to stay together and work out our own differences so we have a stronger defense against all these attacks, real and virtual. And we need to take ownership of these problems at some level too, and not let states define what Islamophobia is. And yes, we do need to wave the flag of Islamophobia, but we also need to be proactive and want to work within the system and to change it from within, and to make it clear that Britain, for example, is our home and it's our children's home and it's our future, as much as it is a future for Britain as a whole.
Yeah. I think the element of trust and hope are key here. You wouldn't be able to survive otherwise. There isn't any other alternate. I know that you've already explained about this, Doctor, but before we let you go, अगर आप दोबारा से जो है वो इस्लामोफोबिया और रेसिज्म के हवाले से थोड़ा सा अगर हमारी अपनी लैंग्वेज में एक्सप्लेन कर सकें तो थोड़ा हमारे ऑडियंस के लिए और ज़्यादा आसानी हो जाएगी कि जी why is Islamophobia not seen as racism? दोनों में क्या फ़र्क है?
प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हमारी हुकूमत और हमारे वो राइटर्स भी है, वो मीडिया वाले भी हैं, वो कहते हैं ये रेसिज्म नहीं है, ये इस्लामोफोबिया है, बिकॉज ये प्रॉब्लम आपकी है, आपके तरीके से, आपके बिहेवियर से ये सब चीज़ें हो रही हैं. वो रिकग्नाइज नहीं करते, वो देखते नहीं है कि ये प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ एक्सक्लूजन है, वो रेसिज्म भी है, वो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. तो ये बिलियंस का सोल्यूशन है. इट्स नॉट वो थोड़ा सा मामूली सो आइडियोलॉजी को थोड़ा सा उसको रब करें तो वो ठीक हो जाएगा सब कुछ. इनके लिए ये थोड़ा सा इजी सोल्यूशन है. हमारे लिए, कम्युनिटीज़ के लिए, पूरी सोसाइटी के लिए हम चाहिए क्या? डेवलपमेंट, अपॉर्चुनिटीज़, इक्वालिटी, फेयरनेस, सोशल जस्टिस, ये होना चाहिए. ये सब आइडियाज़ हमारे इस्लाम में है. सो ये नॉट एलियन टू अस, बट इट्स एलियन टू सिस्टम. क्या वो शॉर्ट टर्म थिंकिंग में वो फिक्स हो गए हैं, तो ये बिगर पिक्चर वो देखने के लिए तैयार नहीं.
या फिर इस तरह भी हो सकता है पॉसिबल कि रेसिज्म तो जो है एक बहुत बड़ा एक क्राइम है और वो कवर्ड है लीगली भी यहाँ पर. तो अगरचे कि वो इस्लामोफोबिया को अंडर द अम्ब्रेला ऑफ रेसिज्म कंसिडर करेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली फिर उसको एक लीगल बैकअप मिल जाएगा और उस हिसाब से वो फिर जो भी विक्टिम होगा वो हेल्प सीख कर सकेगा अकॉर्डिंग टू द लॉ. तो इसलिए मेरे ख्याल में वो उसको रेसिज्म से अलग करके उन्होंने रखा हुआ है. जिस तरह से आपने कहा कि ये इस्लामोफोबिया जो है इट्स ओनली रिलेटेड टू इस्लाम एंड द एक्शंस दैट मुस्लिम्स टेक एंड इट्स गॉट नथिंग टू डू विद द रेस. परहैप्स वो नहीं चाहते कि उसको लीगल कोई अथॉरिटी मिल जाए स्पेसिफिक एक्शन को जिसको इस्तेमाल करते हुए मुसलमान जो हैं वो किसी किस्म की सपोर्ट या असिस्टेंस जो है वो सीख कर सकें. और फिर ये भी बात सामने आती है कि आप किस तरह से रेसिज्म को तो चलें अगर आपने कोई गलत ज़बान इस्तेमाल की या कुछ इस किस्म की बात कर दी. इस्लामोफोबिया की जहाँ पे बात आती है तो उसके लिए उसको कवर करने के लिए, उसको असेस करने के लिए वो ये कहते हैं कि जी इंटेंशन काउंट करती है. तो आप किस तरह से किसी के इंटेंशन को जो है वो गेज कर सकेंगे? किसी ने आपको गाली दे दी और ये कह दिया कि नहीं मेरा इंटेंशन नहीं था, तो आप किस तरह से गेज करेंगे? वो तो फिर स्लाइड अवे हो जाएगी ना चीज़.
वो एक बात है, मसलन क्या एक आदमी दूसरे को कहा आप कोई गलत ज़बान से बोलें, गलत लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल करें और इंसल्ट करें, तो वो डायरेक्ट इस्लामोफोबिया है. तो उसको हम रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं बिकॉज वो हेट क्राइम के साथ मिलते हैं, स्पेशली वो वायलेंस के साथ हो. बट ये दूसरी बात भी है, कोई हम देखते हैं स्टोरीज वगैरह के, कोई एक इटालियन होता وہ ریسٹورینٹ میں اٹالین آپ کے فرینڈس کے ساتھ ریسٹورینٹ میں بیٹھا ہوتا تو وہ اٹیک ہو جاتا بیکاز اس کا ڈارک اسکن ہے تو تھوڑا سا ڈارک ہیئر ہے تو وہ اٹیک ہو گیا بیکاز دوسرے کہتے ہیں آپ مسلم اس کو پھر مار دیا تو پھر وہ مسلم نہیں تھا وہ اٹالین تھا وہ ڈنر کھا رہا تھا بٹ پرابلم از یہ ریکگنائز نہیں ہوتا یہ اسلاموفوبیا ہے بٹ وہ اس میں فگر نہیں ہوتا بیکاز وہ اٹس ناٹ اے ریشل اٹیک سو دیئرفور وہ ریشل اٹیک ریس ہیٹ کرائم وہ سیپریٹ ہو جاتی ہمارا مقصد ہے تھوڑا سا یہ اس کی ریکگنیشن امپروو ہے اور وائڈ ہو جائے وہ بارنس سعید وارسی وہ باقی ہمارے پارلیمنٹیرینس کافی کوشش کی تھی وہ انہوں نے APPG برٹش مسلمز گروپ انہوں نے تیار کیا ڈیفینیشن آف اسلاموفوبیا ہم نے سب نے اس کو کنٹریبیوٹ کیا ٹو ٹرائی اینڈ وائڈن دا ڈبیٹ اسپیشلی وہ کنزرویٹو پارٹی میں تھوڑا سا وہ دیکھیں یہ کیا ہو رہا ہے وہ کیا کرتے ہیں تو کیا مسئلہ وہ ریز ہوتا بٹ ان کی تقریباً وہ کھل ہوگی کہیں نہیں جا رہا اینڈ یہ ڈبیٹ تقریباً سٹول ہوگی کیونکہ ہمارا تھوڑا سا امیڈیٹ بریکسٹ وغیرہ یہ کنسرن ہے یہ یورپین یونین کوشچن بھی ہے اور اسٹیریٹی فیل بھی چل رہی بیکاز 3 سال میں یہ بریکسٹ معاملہ سب کو کنفیوز کر دیا
بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں ڈاکٹر صاحب بٹ تھینک یو ویری مچ ڈاکٹر صاحب ابھی تک آپ نے جتنی بھی انفارمیشن ہمارے ساتھ شیئر کی آئی ایم شیور آور آڈینس ہیز ڈیفینیٹلی بینیفٹڈ فرام اٹ بیکاز یہ سارے جو موٹے موٹے الفاظ ہو گئے اسلاموفوبیا ہو گیا ریسزم ہو گیا ہیٹ کرائم ہو گیا یہ ہمارے کامنرز کے لیے بہت مشکل ہے ان الفاظوں کو سمجھنا اور بیئر کرنا اور اسپیشلی ایکسپیرئنس کرنا ان سب چیزوں کو سو تھینک یو ویری مچ ڈاکٹر صاحب فار بینگ آن بورڈ with us today and inshallah we look forward to being in contact with you in the future as well. جی ناظرین تو آج کا جو ہمارا ٹاپک تھا وہ اسلاموفوبیا کے حوالے سے تھا جیسا کہ آپ جانتے ہیں کہ ڈاکٹر طاہر عباس آج ہمارے مہمان خصوصی تھے اور انہوں نے بڑی ڈیٹیل میں اس پورے ٹاپک کو جو ہے وہ بریک ڈاؤن کر کے ہمارے ساتھ انفارمیشن شیئر کی تو ڈیفینیٹلی آپ سب کو جو ہے وہ یہ ٹاپک آج کا اور آج کی جو معلومات ہم نے شیئر کی بینیفیشل لگا ہوگا اور آئی ایم شیور کہ آپ کو اب اندازہ ہو گیا ہے کہ کیا فرق ہے اسلاموفوبک اٹیک میں ریسسزم میں یا ہیٹ کرائم میں اور کس قسم کے میکنزمز ہمارے پاس یہاں پر موجود ہیں جن کو استعمال کرتے ہوئے اگر آپ وکٹمائز کیے جاتے ہیں تو آپ ان کو اپروچ کر سکتے ہیں اور آپ کو وہاں سے مدد مل سکتی ہے تو انشاءاللہ ناظرین اگلے ہفتے دوبارہ آپ سے ملوں گی اسی دن پر منڈے کو 4 سے 5 کے درمیان سہیلی پروگرام کے پلیٹ فارم سے آپ کی سہیلی آپ کی دوست ہنا جنیجو.
Hashin G Travels and Tours. Special discount packages for Hajj and Umrah. Accommodation at nearest hotels from Haram Sharif. Moreover, you can contact for visit visa of any country in the world. Now, the lowest ticket price of all airlines and special offer for all airports in Pakistan. Special discount and packages for travel agent. Hashin G Travels and Tours. Director Chaudhary